My family's immigration story, like that of countless others, began with the threat of Nazism in Europe. My father, a promising young attorney, and my mother, an accomplished beautician, were married in 1938 and had, by all accounts, a bright future ahead of them. However, the events of history were to derail their hopes and plans. The day Hitler entered Prague on March 15, 1939, my father foresaw the ominous events that followed, and they took the first train to France. My father had studied there and was fluent in the language. However, it soon became obvious that the threat was not limited to Czechoslovakia, and he decided to seek refuge in the New World. France's colony Haiti was the most accessible, available destination. They found life on this island almost unbearable, as they suffered various bouts of malaria. Visas to the United States were limited, but Ecuador provided them with one. It is so that in 1940 they reached a country where 4 years later I was to be born, and that ultimately became my mother's home for the rest of her life. This was a completely underdeveloped country. The 3,000 to 4,000 Jews who found refuge in this country were fortunate because its people were not only welcoming but also very kind. As one of the recent immigrants stated, "I would rather live among people who have lice than people who have become beasts." These Jews soon established community organizations that handled their cultural and religious affairs. They formed the Hevra Kadisha that bought a cemetery, a women's league, a youth club, a Zionist organization, a Bedin to adjudicate disputes within the community, and even a Maccabi athletic group. They also created a bank, opened a kosher restaurant, all under the umbrella entity designated as Beneficencia Israelita de Quito. In its social hall, cultural events were held almost 100 nights per year. These Jews, thankful for their miraculous escape from Europe, were committed to maintaining their Jewish traditions and to defy Hitler's goals. So this was the world in which I was born, but it was not to be for long. Once the war came to an end, many of these immigrants sought other shores more in keeping with their culture and educational backgrounds. In this vein, my father orchestrated our return to Czechoslovakia in 1947. However, the winds of change were moving that country into the Soviet bloc, and thus our attempt to return proved to be short-lived. In 1948 we moved to Israel, just a few months after the new nation was created, and as the War of Independence still raged on. After 2 challenging years in this pioneering venture, my parents opted to return to Ecuador, where we arrived at the end of 1950. Thus, before I turned 7, I had lived in 3 different continents. We were truly the prototypes of the wandering Jews. What followed were 11 years of geographic stability that comprised my personal experience in Ecuador, the years of my youth. These were years filled with joy and sweet memories. While we lived in a larger Ecuadorian community and went to school with them, my personal and social life was entirely segregated and fully centered around the Organización Juvenil Israelita de Quito, OJIC. The Jewish community brought madrichim from Israel every 2 years to teach us and inculcate in us both Jewish and Zionist values ideologically around the movement Hashomer HaTzair. And so it was that when this phase of my life ended, as I finished high school and I had to pursue higher education, that with great sadness I left those years and memories behind. The sharp pain I experienced when the airport loudspeaker said, "Your attention please, Air France announces the departure of its flight to Bogota, Port-au-Prince and Paris," remains among the most painful moments of my life. I knew that this was a one-way trip. 11 years would elapse before I returned.